Barely Emerging is recorded on the lands of the Kaurna people. We at Haunted Cow Collective acknowledge the Kaurna people and all other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the sovereign custodians of this country, and we pay our respects to elders past and present. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
She's literally climbing the fucking walls.
Holding a Jesus.
just one of them.
One of them. Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of 2 Minute Googles. I'm Francis.
And I'm Sid.
And today we are talking about the art thing.
The art thing.
So in our conversation with Riley O'Keefe, he mentioned that he and his friends have a term they like to use when art, for the lack of the better phrase, does the thing. You know, like when you are in a gallery and a work just arrests you, just arrests your attention, makes you feel a certain way. Sid and I are going to talk about the works that do that for us.
The one I'm going to talk about today is something that I actually haven't seen in person. I do want to preface this episode with I don't know if any work that I have seen personally has done the art thing to me.
It's only happened with me in person like a couple times. Yeah.
There are works that I can look at online and I definitely go, oof, yes, I wish I could see that in person because I know that's going to do something to me. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'll be talking about Lilith from Kiki Smith.
Oh, it's a great one.
A lot of the works that she does, I could get the art thing from multiple of them.
Yeah.
Today I'm talking about Lilith just because of her eyes.
Yeah.
So Lilith is a bronze sculpture and the way that it is presented is climbing the wall upside down. It is a female figure who is unrefined in a way, like the sculpture isn't...
It's bronze, isn't it?
It's bronze, yeah. So it's not like a Rodin or anything like that.
It's not polished.
No,
yeah.
It's not polished. There's rough edges, but the one thing that is polished is her eyes. Her eyes are made of glass and they've got this blue-grey, steely gaze and they are poignant. It's something that you could be going about your business and you catch the corner of your eye and you are just stunned into space because those eyes are saying something to you very loudly.
They look like medical grade prosthetics.
Yeah
like they're
do.
so intricate and it just looks like someone's just been dipped in bronze.
Yeah, it's amazing. Kiki Smith usually works exploring the human condition. She uses repetitive narratives and symbolic representations, and much of her work is inspired by visual culture. So Lilith is of the Bible. Lilith was made of the same clay that Adam was, and she was cast out of the garden.
Allegedly,
yeah. And then Eve was created of Adam's rib because then Eve would be subservient to Adam.
Yeah, Lilith was cast out of the garden for not obeying Adam.
Yeah. So then the image of Lilith was of this demonic woman who eats babies.
Yeah. It turned into this whole thing about like she's a demoness who sexually assaulted Adam in his sleep and all this kind of stuff. But as with most biblical tales, who's to say?
Who's to say? We don't know.
Which is the correct, if any, story of Lilith,
And in my view, I think it is just that patriarchal view of a woman who does not obey turns into the devil.
Which is great because this sculpture, it has like a feral quality to it. Because she's crouched on all fours.
She's literally climbing the fucking walls.
Yeah, it's like full Spider-Man and she's upside down and then she has this like, because the head is like looking to the side so that the viewer can see her eyes. Like she's not facing the wall, she's facing like as outwardly as she can. And then you just get these fucking eyes, dude.
Bro, they could.
I have them up on my laptop screen at the moment, and I feel watched.
She'd be looking at you. The great thing about this sculpture as well is that feminine usually in artworks is this languid pose. The female nude is done to death, and it is done in a way that is
real, like Birth of Venus vibes.
Birth of Venus, you know, the male gaze is really, really strong most of the time with feminine figures. But what Kiki Smith has done, she has distorted this view of the feminine, and it is really raw, and it is really, as you've said before, feral, but in just such a powerful way.
Yeah, this real like primal kind of way.
Yeah.
And this work too was made in 1994, wasn't it? Yeah, so that's still within the era where women were seen as an object. Like, it's still a very male gazy kind of era. When I always think of the 90s and stuff like that, I always think of it, you know, like the Kurt Cobain versus Courtney Love.
Yeah.
Like, Courtney Love was literally just the female Kurt Cobain, and everyone fucking hated her.
Yeah.
Even though Kurt was doing the exact same things as she was. So yeah, when I kind of look at like feminist art from that era, it's just like, this isn't even feminist art. It's like abject art.
Yeah.
But when you put it in that kind of frame,
it does something to me. Like, you have to stare at the eyes. Like, have a look at pictures from different views, but there is one specific picture that we will put on the Instagram that is a really great photograph. Like, you can see the details of the face really, really well, and yeah, it is literally just staring fucking daggers at you, and I love it.
I think the big impact of this work is like, yeah, it's the unrefined bronze. Yeah, it's like the on all fours like pose, and yeah, for sure it's the eyes. But for me also, it's just the positioning of it. You know, it's like she is up the wall with like, you know, like ass facing towards the ceiling. So like up the wall, and like upside down, and like quite far up the wall, like enough that you would be eye level with her. It's just great. Yeah,
no, and Kiki Smith does this sort of stuff really, really well. Like, her figures, they are just jaw-dropping. Like, you look at them and you're like, what the fuck? There's a sculpture called Born, and she does have another etching called Born, but the specific one I'm talking about is a deer who is giving birth to an adult woman. Like,
yeah.
And the position is just, it's comical.
It's so off.
It is so,
you know,
off.
I'm like, why is the human figure so straight?
Yeah.
You know, it's like
it's like a mannequin coming out of a deer.
People don't be doing that.
Yeah.
You know?
The essence of that is just comical, but also unnerving. When I get the art thing, I think it's when I'm unnerved, or when something's just not quite right.
Yeah.
And this is why I like abject art.
Yeah.
And this is why this type of art does the art thing to me, is because I can look at it and go like, that's fucking weird. Ugh, love you.
Yeah. The things that always do the art thing for me are either really fucking weird or they're really fucking depressing. And I don't know what that says about me, but they're just the things that really do it for me. The one that gave me the art thing, there's a few, but the one I kind of narrowed down on for the purpose of this episode was one that I saw in person at the National Gallery of Victoria. It's called Anguish by August Schenck. So this was painted in 1878. It's colloquially known as the sad sheep painting. It was one of the first ones that was acquired by the National Gallery, actually. It was because that was opened in 1880. And yeah, this was like one of the first acquisitions, but it's been voted like the most popular of the gallery's 75,000 works, both in 1906 and in 2011.
Wow.
Which is kind of crazy because it's nothing groundbreaking. You know, like the National Gallery of Victoria has works by fucking Picasso and like Dali and Jean Moreau and like all these other quote unquote huge names. And yet the one that seems to grab everyone's attention enough to be voted most popular like twice and like 100 years apart is just this random, like I've seen it been described as like schmaltzy and like kitschy photo of like this sheep. And I'll just describe it for listening purposes. So the painting, it depicts a distraught ewe, so like a female sheep, bleating in grief, her breath freezing in the cold air. She's standing over the dead body of her lamb. and a trickle of blood is running from its mouth onto the white snow. So it's reminiscent of like a pieta, you know, like the Virgin Mary holding a Jesus.
Yep.
Holding a Jesus.
just one of them.
One of them.
One of many.
It's like Virgin Mary just holding one of the many Jesuses.
Yeah.
And they're encircled by like a murder of black crows.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty monochromatic, you know, it's like really like muted tones.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like white, grey, brown and black. And it's pretty big as well. It's 151 centimeters by 251 centimeters. So it's quite like cinematic in size.
Yeah.
But there's just something about it and like the detail of it. And it's just, I stood in front of this thing in the gallery and I was standing there for no shit about 20 minutes. And I was just looking at the sadness in this fucking mother sheep's eyes and like the coldness of the breath. I could almost feel it in a fucking weird way. And I actually like teared up. Like I welled up with tears like looking at this thing.
It's, as you say, it's very cinematic, not just in like the size of it, but the way that it's presented. You can almost see the drama of it all. The
drama of it all, I think, is a good way to put it. Because for me, it's the composition of it, you know? So like the mother sheep's face, it's in the upper, but it's in the center of the canvas pretty much, you know? And it's like she's placed above, you know? And then it's like where the light is lightest is around like the sheep. So it really does kind of draw your eye around.
Yeah.
But then it's just encircled by this black, like opportunistic ring of potential, like they've come to pick apart this lamb. They've come to take this lamb away from her and she's like standing over it like, no.
Yeah. And the facial expression of the ewe, so the mother is so personified. So you can really see, you know, for lack of a better word, because the fucking title is Anguish, like you can see the anguish on the face and it just like, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because the only real article I could find on this is one that was written in 2021. And it's just the story behind the National Gallery of Victoria's sad sheep painting and its mysterious artist.
Sad sheep painting.
Yeah. And it's like, and the subheading, the painting has twice been voted one of the gallery's most popular works, but not much is known about the artist. And it's right. Like there's really only a couple of lines on August Schenck's Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
And there's even fewer lines about this actual work, aside from just like a description of it. It's been theorized that the work might have taken inspiration from the 1872 book, The Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals by Charles Darwin. And that was when he argued that emotions have biological origins and that animals have similar emotions to humans. It's also been interpreted as a commentary on the cruelty of society, represented by the crowd of opportunistic crows. But aside from that, it was pretty standard for the time, I think. You know, in 1870s, there was a lot of artwork being made about, you know, like death and disease and like really like bleak paintings being done.
Bleak
paintings. Like in its time, paintings like it were really popular. He had a few different paintings of other animals like in distress. He had another one called like the Orphan, and it's almost like a reversal of this one. It's the mother sheep is dead on the floor and like the lamb standing over it, but the crows are higher up. They're like on a fence. And he was very successful with those. Death and suffering apparently were very fashionable during the 19th century. You know, like in Europe particularly, Queen Victoria, she was in her mourning period for like Prince Albert. Death was literally everywhere. And people just apparently loved these allegories of animals, you know, taking on the human emotions. Because it was someone of the time, it was like they could imagine their own child was ill. They could imagine that the mother had lost their child or a parent had lost their child. And shit like that was like really common in the 1860s and 1870s because, you know, there wasn't proper sanitation and death was a lot more, it just permeated a lot more throughout the fabric of society than it perhaps does now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the orphan sheep painting and I'm going back to the expression of the orphan and the anguish is different.
It is,
and you can tell like the orphan sheep is so worried. Like you can see that worry of what next? How the fuck do I survive now?
Yeah, that was my exact thing. When I stood in front of this work in the Gallery of Victoria, I felt the loss from the mother sheep.
Yeah.
When I was like, fuck, that that painting really did something to me. And I went away and like looked it up, and then I looked up the Orphan and the helplessness from the little sheep.
Yeah.
There's hopelessness in the big sheep. There's helplessness in the little sheep. And that is such a kick in the gut.
It is.
I fucking love animals, so it's not even that. But even though it's like a fictional depiction, it's just like my heart's like bleeding for these things, you know? He was pretty successful, pretty famous in like the 1870s or so. But then by like the 1930s, these works were considered like cheesy and embarrassingly emotional and just designed to tug at the heartstrings, and he was criticized for being like overly sentimental and all this kind of stuff.
When can you be sentimental
literally
then? Like,
you know, seriously. And you know, so that's probably why there isn't a lot of other work done on Schenck, because people just kind of shied away from him as having fallen out of taste.
Yeah.
Which is a real shame, I think. You know, that thing about things being like overly sentimental, it's like I can kind of get it, because you know, it's like when you get movies that are made now and you're like, that is just absolute fucking cheese sauce, and I can tell that you are trying to manipulate me into crying, and fuck you, it's working, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Or I can see what you were trying to do and it's not working,
and
because
now
I can see
at you.
because I can see the machinations behind that. And that's probably maybe what they felt before. But I think we're viewing this in the eyes of consumerism now, and the eyes of like what we are actually doing to people and other beings in the world now. So I think maybe it has done a bit of a circle back around to the fact that, like, yes, we may have moved on to a different sort of death.
Yeah, and I think that's like, if this was voted its most popular artwork like 30 or so years after the gallery was like founded in 1906, and then again over 100 years later in like 2011. So yeah, it's like done this like full big circle thing.
Loop, yeah.
Either way, when I was there, people were crowding around it. It's funny because it doesn't even stand out that much. It's this big painting. It's in this big like gilded gold frame in a fucking huge gallery room full of other big paintings in other big gold frames.
Yeah.
There is nothing other than the content of the painting that would draw people in, and yet it does.
It does, yeah.
It really does. The bleak anguish of it, for sure. It really stands out. It really does, because it reminds you of like the Pieta. But you see like 50 billion of them a day. There's famously been depictions of, you know, Jesus be dying.
Yeah. Jesus be. Sorry, that got me.
But there's just something about this one and the way that the emotion is conveyed through an animal that it feels so out of step. You know, it's like, how many paintings, particularly from the time, have you seen of like weeping people? Yeah. You know, like someone's dead in bed and there's people weeping over them, and you kind of like, yeah, well, that fucking happens. Yeah. But then there's just something about, I don't know, maybe it's just me being a fucking huge pussy, but there's just something about this little sheep that made me start crying in a gallery.
Yeah. And look, that's the art thing for you. Sometimes it is over the silliest things. Yeah. And I know I did say at the start that I haven't had this in person. I think I've had something close to it in AGSA, where I didn't want to mention it because I can't remember who it was by, but I think it might be a Frank Stella. But it is this kind of muted canvas, and it's got just a little bit of markings through it, and it's just like little dots here and there, and I had to look at it. Like, I had to keep looking at it, and it's one of those things that I didn't know why I had to keep looking at it. I just had to keep looking at it. And I guess that's the closest that I've been in person. I can't say that I got too emotive over it. It just arrested me for a little bit, but I was able to move on pretty quickly.
Well, I've definitely had like instances where I've been drawn into a painting for different reasons. You know, I remember standing in front of Van Gogh's Sunflowers in London and like getting so close to the canvas and seeing the brush strokes and seeing the bristle from his paintbrush. One of them was like stuck in the paint. Ooh, and just being like, oh, fuck, that's cool. That's like a hand of the maker, you know, and like just being like, how the fuck did you do that? And like seeing like the marks in it. I've definitely, you know, had that plenty of times like throughout my life.
I think artists have that all the time. I think like if I'm approaching an artwork and I can see the hand of the maker, I can see myself. It kind of it leads you into it. And you know, I've definitely seen other works where it's like I've walked in and it's been like the size of the wall.
and it's just the sheer grandeur and scale of it, and you're like, oh shit.
Yep.
But then you kind of like, anyway, but this one, you know, just a couple of meters wide, it's just a sheep and some crows, and I stood there for fucking ages and I got teary-eyed, and that doesn't really, like, I'm not a huge crier. Like, that doesn't really happen. But yeah, I don't know, you don't know what is going to set you off until it does, I suppose. Yeah.
And I think, like, coming to the end of this episode, I think what we can encourage people to do if they want to try and feel the art thing, go look at art.
Just go see art.
Yeah.
But it's one thing to scroll past something on Instagram or, you know, go and do a quick walk around like a local gallery space, but sometimes you just need to sit with the art. You know, when you get those pieces of art that does the art thing for you and like stops you in your tracks and just really captures your attention and makes you feel things, it's like, oh, this is why we need art.
Yeah.
You know? Have a great day, guys. Bye.
Thanks, bye, guys.
Quiet your eyes, demons.
Your eyes are screaming. You have been listening to Barely Emerging, a podcast made by Haunted Cow Collective. You can find us at our website, hauntedcow.com.au, or our Instagram at Barely Emerging, and our Instagram and YouTube at Haunted Cow Collective. This podcast is made by emerging creatives for emerging creatives, and together we are Barely Emerging.